You cannot push an officer away. So we just did what we do with everyone who's doing something he doesn't supposed to do in Palestine. We arrest him. And it's always the same way. It doesn't matter if he's 85 years old or he's 80 years old. It's always the same way. We have a little piece of plastic in our weapon, and we're just tying him behind his back very tightly. We have a piece of fabric in our weapon, we just blindfold him. And we're just taking the father and throwing him into the military jeep. And the mother of the kid that was killed, seeing that we just arrested our husband, is getting outside of the house. And she starts screaming at us. And she's screaming at us and screaming at us and screaming at us. And it was so deep that all of a sudden I understood that I already heard this screaming before. She was screaming exactly like my grandma used to wake us up with every night when I was a kid. And I didn't know a word in Arabic. I didn't understand what she's saying, but I understood everything that she meant in her screaming. And I just couldn't handle her screaming, so I just volunteered to take the father to the base to arrest him. And I just jumped into the jeep and just drove away. And we got to the base, and I just put the father in the entrance of the base like we did with most of the people that we arrested. And I just went back to my bed and put the blanket over my head and trying to make it go away. But it didn't. And that was the first time out of many that I will understand that history is knocking on the door right now. And I'm on the wrong side. All of my life I was waiting to be on the right side, but I was on the wrong side all these months. And everything just snapped in my head. And I just had to shut myself down. I just shut myself down completely. My father, like many times before that, will call me and will tell me that the IDF spokesman talked about us. Retrospective, after a few days, he will tell me that the IDF spokesman gave an announcement about our unit in Hebron. He said that our unit managed to kill the terrorist and to arrest another terrorist that tried to help him in his job in this weekend. And my mind was just not there anymore. And I just snapped. I closed up my head and continued to do my service. Day after day after day after day, continue to do the same thing. I will go into houses in the middle of the night. I will arrest people. I will arrest children, sometime under the age of 10 or 8, alone. I will arrest women and elderly people. I will shoot at protesters, live ammunition sometimes, rubber bullet or tear gas canister. I will do everything that I will be required in the next half a year, 6 months. I will just do everything like I'm supposed to. But when I'm starting to come home during the weekends, I understand that I cannot go back to be the same person I was. I understand that you cannot be the same person at home and a soldier at the army. You have to choose, and I, without no chose that I'm a soldier. So I'm going back home, and I'm just not myself, and I'm literally could not recognize my face in the mirror. My mother is starting to tell me that I became a very violent man to them, to my parents. My girlfriend at the time is breaking up with me, and I'm completely on the edge. So I'm deciding to do something I didn't thought I will do. I'm taking my phone and I'm calling an old friend from back home. And we don't really like him because he's kind of a lefty friend. He's the leftiest friend of the group, and he's coming from a lefty family, so nobody really liked this guy. But I'm giving him a call. And the only reason I really have his number is because he's like really good at basketball, so we keep in touch. So I'm calling my friend and I'm telling him, man, you have to understand what I'm going through. I have to tell you. You're the only one who can listen to me. You're the only one I can think about calling. And my friend said, whoa, wait, what's going on? And I'm telling him, I have to tell you what I saw. And he's saying, okay, go. And I'm just starting telling him this story and many else worst sometimes stories about the last 6 months. So myself, I'm telling him story by story by story. And at some point, my friend is telling me, whoa, Eran, okay, stop. Okay, listen, if you're really in such a bad shape, if you're really on the edge, if you really understand what's going down there, would you consider coming with me next Friday when you're leaving the base to a protest with Anarchists Against the Wall in the village of Berlin? And I'm saying, whoa. Anarchists against the wall? Are you crazy? Anarchists, Mohawk earrings, I don't know what anarchists are. It's crazy people, no way, I am out, I'm not going there. And he's saying, Eran, what do you got to lose? And I understand that I really don't have anything to lose at that moment. So I'm saying yes. And the next Friday I'm leaving the base. Instead of going back to Jerusalem, I'm going to Tel Aviv. I'm putting my uniform in my civilian bag. I'm putting civilian clothes on me. And I find myself on a bus of Anarchists Against the Wall to the village of Bilin. The village of Bilin is a small village in the middle of Palestine that the separation barrier, the separation wall is cutting the village in the middle, taking half of the land and half of the olive grove to the other side of the wall, just ruining their work and life of decades, and just taking it to the other side of the wall. And since 2004, I think, the people of Bilin, it's exactly 9 years. It was this Friday, the last Friday was exactly 9 years to the protest. Every Friday, non-violent protest, marches against the wall, against the soldier, against the occupation, marching to the wall, screaming to the soldier, leave our land, take with you your checkpoints, take with you your wall. And they're marching. And I'm getting into Bilin, and I am scared shitless. I am so scared. I was never on a Palestinian ground, surrounded by Palestinians, without my M16, my 2 hand grenades, my 6 packs of ammunition, and my backup. Never. Everybody is talking in Arabic around me, and the only words I knew in Arabic was strip down and give me your ID. So I couldn't say that. So I was really stuck in the middle of the village, very much afraid. And then the marching was starting. And back then it was still a fence. Today is a 20-foot concrete wall. And they're starting to march into the fence. And there's some drummers, and there's some singing and some signs. And we're just marching. And I'm marching with them, and I'm so scared. And then in the corner of my eye, I see a few young men rising up and throwing some stones in the direction of the fence. And then immediately, 360 around us, we're surrounded by military army units. All around us, the Israeli army is popping up and just starts shooting without saying a word. Just start shooting into our body, and they're shooting rubber bullets. And I don't know if you ever know that, but rubber bullets are not rubber bullets. They're steel bullets with a little rubber around them. I didn't know that, and they're shooting rubber bullets into our body. They're shooting tear gas canisters into our body. And I was never shot at before. I shot at people before, but nobody ever shot at me. And I was so afraid that the only thing I could think about saying was just, stop shooting, stop shooting. I'm an Israeli soldier. I'm an Israeli soldier, stop shooting. And then one of the anarchist guys looking at me like this, saying, I'm an Israeli soldier too! You can stop shooting! And then a bunch of Palestinians are coming and saying, we are all Israeli soldiers! You can stop shooting! I was not laughing because they didn't stop shooting. And then the tear gas started to kick in. And I don't know if you ever got tear gas. We tried it a little bit in boot camp, but it was nothing like that day in Bilin. The tear gas started to kick in, and tear gas basically just closes you up completely. You feel that you cannot breathe. It just chokes you up. You cannot take air inside. And until today, I'm not sure if tear gas is working here or it's working here, but it's working. And you feel that you cannot breathe. And my instinct was to try to run away from the gas, but it just made it worse. So I find myself on 4 in the middle of the village, trying to breathe, thinking, this is how I'm gonna die. And after a few moments, a few young Palestinian men just ran across from me, and one of them saw me, came back, he just grabbed me with him and ran with me into his home in the village. He sat me down in his home. He gave me some onion, apparently it's very good for that, and some alcohol pads, until I could feel that I breathe again. I went out of his house, back to my home, to this weekend, and I knew this is it for me. I will never go back to do the same things again, ever. But then Sunday came, and I'm taking up my uniform, and I'm taking my gun, and I'm going back to Hebron. Because this is the only reality we know to be true in Israel. I didn't have any friends who didn't serve at this time. I didn't have any family member I can tell that I don't want to go back. So I'm going back, but this time I'm promising myself things will be different. And I'm continuing to going into protests with Anarchists Against the Wall, and after a few weeks, they met me up in Tel Aviv with Doctors Without Borders. You know Doctors Without Borders? So they met me with the Israeli branch of Doctors Without Borders, and I will sit there, and they will ask for my help, and will explain to me their very specific situation in Doctors Without Borders, Israel. They're telling me, you know, all the Palestinians in the West Bank, if they want to get to hospitals or get in medicine, get treatment, have to go through checkpoints into Israel proper or through the West Bank. They have checkpoints between their land to their land, and they have to go through it. And if they want to go through the checkpoints, they have to have permits from the military, humanitarian permits to go to a hospital. And all of you, of course, know that the Israeli army is the most moral army in the world, right? So you know the Israeli army is already taking out the permits. It does. But instead of giving it to the sick Palestinians, it's giving it to the lawyers of Doctors Without Borders that are arresting them every day. And then all they need to do is to make sure that they don't let anyone from Doctors Without Borders or representative go through the checkpoints into the West Bank and give these permits into sick hands of Palestinians. And this is how the Israeli army is basically making sure, in a legal aspect, this is protected from every angle. Nobody can complain. During this time, my mother is dying out of cancer back home in Jerusalem. And I'm finding myself, in the next year and a half, sneaking out of my base in the middle of the night with my uniform and my vest and my gun, going into houses in the middle of Hebron and later on South Mount Hebron, knocking on the door. This time I will be as a guest, and I will go inside and give people permits to go through checkpoints and medicine. And in return, I will hear their stories about what it is to live under a military occupation. And during this time, I meet countless women with breast cancer in Palestine. The number is unknown to anybody because there's nobody taking track. But during this time, my mother is dying back home, and I can see the exact same things going on. And my mind just going wider and wider. During this time, I'm hearing about a little group called Breaking the Silence, a young group of veteran soldiers, combat soldiers, that collecting testimonies from other soldiers across the West Bank and publish it into the Israeli public and international people. What is the truth inside these occupied territories? And I decided I want to tell my story, my mother's story, this woman's story. And I'm starting to give them stories from inside the army. And the day I released from the army, I joined Breaking the Silence. And for the next 2.5 years, I will become their chief investigator. We'll take testimonies from more than 250 soldiers from the West Bank and Gaza, and we'll try to publish it into the Israeli public and abroad. And I know that the occupation is that close to be ended with, because the people of Israel didn't hear my story yet. And after they hear my story, the occupation will have to drop, right? But a few months go by and nothing changed, and the testimonies that I'm collecting doesn't do anything. And then Operation Keslet started. And Operation Keslet was so bad. We sat back at home and tried to understand what's going on, but nobody told us what's going on down in Gaza. So I'm finding myself going from Breaking the Silence office into the border with Gaza and just stand there outside of the border, waiting for soldiers to go out of the operation to tell me what was going on inside. And after 3 weeks, soldiers are starting to come out from Gaza. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them will pass through me and will tell me their stories. And they were very, very confused. A lot of people think they were very mad or very happy in Operation Keslet, but they weren't. They were very confused because those soldiers was training for years and months to be handling a war. And they got their war when they got to Gaza. They saw tank shells just bombing everything in sight for them. They saw Air Force, the Israeli Air Force, just dropping ton bombs on civilians, clearing the path for them to go in. They saw white phosphorus falling from the sky, burning everything it touches along the way. But until it was their time to go by foot into Gaza, there was no enemy left. Just hundreds of dead bodies around them every day of the operation. And they came out very confused. And in the next 3 months, I will collect testimonies from everyone that serve inside Gaza during this time. And we'll put a booklet down of Breaking the Silence, a booklet of testimonies from Operation Keslet. But before we're going out with it to the Israeli public, we want to make sure this time we have a good platform so people will listen. It's important enough. So we're going to the most lefty newspaper in Israel. What is the most lefty newspaper in Israel? Haaretz. Everybody knows Haaretz all the time. It's weird. Yeah, so we're turning to Haaretz. And I'm talking with Amos Salel, the military reporter of Haaretz, and I'm telling him the stories, and him saying, whoa, if this stories is true, you guys are getting a cover story. And he's verifying the stories for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, he's saying, it's going to come out this Friday. And all of us on Friday go out to the stores and buy all the outlets we can, but there is no cover story.